But before I get into that, I had an experience which I thought it was another way, if anybody out there is still on the fence as to whether they believe these viruses exist or not, take a listen to this. So probably 6 or so weeks ago, I was contacted from somebody, I believe in Australia, who just wanted to connect with me, I guess, and just share some information. His story is fascinating and relevant because he said that he was a retired analytical chemist, spent 50 years doing that. And he became, according to him, I haven't checked him out, and I have no reason to try to check him out, really. He became one of the leading people in the world at finding things that are difficult to find. He described that in his work, he had to find things that were so small and so few in number, 1 or 2 molecules, and so volatile that if he exposed whatever it was to either light or air for like 2 or 3 seconds, he would lose the specimen and he wouldn't be able to find what he was looking for. So he was essentially a world expert at finding difficult things. And he described that when he would find something, he would write up the procedure that he found it, and then sometimes he would submit this to the various journals, because these were things that were going to be used in engineering projects or different applications to make real things in the real world. And he said that if he omitted any control step or didn't absolutely prove at every step of the way that what he said he did, he actually did, he would, first of all, the journals would reject his article. And as he said, he would be a kind of a laughingstock. If he mixed something with phenol or an antibiotic, which that's not what he did, but anything, he had to prove by doing some kind of control experiment that the antibiotic didn't create the thing that he was allegedly said he found or was looking for. That to not do that essentially automatically disqualified you from the ranks of serious analytical chemists. So somehow, a number of months ago, somebody asked him to look at virology, and I guess he looked at some of my videos, and he started looking into it because he's an expert on finding things. And he read about and found out, how big a virus is, what it allegedly contains, what the proteins and nucleic acids, the size, the morphology, and all that. And he basically said, I could find this in a day or a week. I could find every so-called pathogenic virus that ever was in a week or in a very short amount of time. And then he looked at the procedures that they use to allegedly find these, and he said, this is a joke. They don't do any control. Nobody would accept this kind of work in our analytical chemistry circles. And so at the end of the day, he said, if I had the equipment, I could find every one of these. And the only reason I couldn't find it is because it's not there. And his basic conclusion was none of these are actually there, that the whole thing is basically uncontrolled, make-believe, quote, science, because it wouldn't be hard to find something of that nature based on what he knows. Now, the reason I say this and why I think this is so important is if you think about this even a little bit, like here you are, the head of the NIH, and somebody says, or let me put it another way, if I was the head of the NIH and somebody says, oh, we found this new particle, it's called a virus, or we think we've had other ones, but now we found a new one, and we want to prove that we have a new virus. So here's what I do. I call the 10 leading virology experts in the world and say, okay, how are you going to prove, and I mean absolutely prove, that this is the case, that this thing exists and does what it says you say it does, and is made of what you say it's made of? And so I would get their entire protocols for how you would go about doing this. And then next step I would do is I would find people like this analytical chemist, maybe 50 of them or 20 of them, or I don't know how many of them, enough, and show them the procedures, show chemists and biologists and physicists and plumbers and electricians and everybody I could think of, what do you think about these procedures? Because obviously there's people who are really good at proving and finding that things exist. And I would see if they have any either complaints or suggestions about the procedure that they're going to use. Then I would make a call for anybody who thinks this is not right, philosophically or otherwise, and have an open meeting and find out what they think. Why do you think there aren't these particles? Then I would have the agreed upon procedures done, probably in a similar way to the viral challenge that we laid out, which is a baby step in proving the existence of these viruses. And then when the results came in, I would call the meeting again with everybody from the public and all these chemists and physicists and electricians and plumbers and anybody who thinks they're interested, and go over the data and find out what they think about it. In other words, I would get every opinion I could, because my goal would be to prove this wrong. And that should be the goal of every scientist. Is there any possible flaw in this? And what was so gratifying is apparently that's what happens in analytical chemistry. They do everything they can to prove that this particle that you say you found, that nobody else found, you didn't find it because you didn't control for the phenol and you didn't control for the temperature and you didn't do that. And this can't be repeated by 10 different labs. And if you can't satisfy that, fair enough, you didn't find it. And that's how science should be done. Now, the amazing part of this is, I don't see how anybody could complain about this. They could say, well, we don't have enough time or we don't have enough money, which is nonsense, because we've been doing this for 70 years and we've already spent $100 billion on it. There's no reason not to do this. And that's what's so shocking when I go to all these leaders in the health freedom movement, and none of them essentially want to even say that this baby step viral challenge, that they want to do that, let alone actually do something that would be exciting to find out, is there anything real to this, or can we prove it's not real? We're not even talking about that step. We're talking about a baby step here. This is what they say, so let's try to prove it. And they don't even want to do that. And all I can say is that should tell everybody that there's some other agenda going on here. It is not about proving whether this is true or not, because it doesn't take any genius to say this is how you do it. You find everybody who's interested, anybody who might have input, figure out if they have any issues with the protocol, and you find out what you get. What's the problem? If you can prove that it's not there, it's not there, then you move on. All right, that's enough of that. Hopefully, the more I keep harping on this, I cannot understand why people don't want to put these ridiculous theories to the test. Every single one of them, whether it's the existence of viruses, or I'll talk about next Wednesday. How do you know that blocked arteries cause heart attacks? How do you know that cancer is a genetic disease? Let's find out how we can actually try to disprove that these things are true. Because if you can't, well, then so be it. That's what that's the solution. And if you can disprove it, then let's do it and move on. And again, my point is there's a lot of people out there, they don't happen to be doctors or virologists, but are analytical chemists and maybe plumbers and electricians who can actually look at that and say, that's not the way to do it. Let's do this.